Hey everyone, this is Ashley Leftwich, and this is my Module 4 presentation for learning assessments. So with learning assessments, Wiggins and McTee really had some very insightful questions to guide you as you're planning activities because without the desired results of assessments, you want to look at what activities are going to help that. If we want students to be able to count to 100 and apply that counting to 100 both conceptually and practically, then what activities need to be in place to model that? So Wiggins and McTee really dove into that with this quote here. And so that makes a shift from the mindset of thinking like an assessor. And that's really hard, I would say, in the general education classroom, because it's really easy to get caught up in the Pinterest or Instagram ready materials or pictures of things looking picture perfect, such as anchor charts or cutesy little crafts. But we've got to look at, are those things actually valuable in helping students reach the learning objectives and the standards being taught to? So with that, we look at the kinds of evidence that we need. So before we design a particular test or task, we need to consider the general types of performances that are implied. So regardless of the content, understanding is often revealed through exercises and comparing, contrasting, or summarizing key ideas. So after mapping out a general ideal or approach to an assessment, we then need to dive into and develop the assessment particulars. So one reference that really stuck out to me was talking about the 100th day of school. This struck a chord with me because when I taught first grade, the 100th day of school is a really big deal. But we've got to look at, with the 100th day of school and some of the activities we do, we have students bring 100 items from home, or they put 100 things on their t-shirt. Like I remember when I was in kindergarten, I had 100 Fruit Loops on my t-shirt. Why Fruit Loops? I have no idea, but that's what I did. And I look back and I think, okay, well, does that particular task of putting 100 Fruit Loops on my shirt or asking my first graders to bring 100 items, does that really help us get the, and not necessarily get to, but reach the understanding both conceptually and practically that we need for assessment particulars? And a lot of times those Pinterest perfect, Instagram perfect, or any sort of social media perfect tasks don't do that. So that really stuck out to me when we were talking, when that example of the 100th day of school was presented. And then the next thing that they mention is the specific characteristics. These are used to determine the extent to which the desires were achieved. Were there rubrics? Was there criteria and exemplars? That's where those pieces come into play, and that really ties it all together. But then that leads to the third set of questions. So, in other words, does the evidence or stage 2 align to our goals in stage 1? And are the results sufficiently there? So few teachers are in the habit of testing their designs once the assessment have been fleshed out, but such self-testing is key to better results and to fairness. So are we able to infer or look at a student's knowledge, skill, or understanding ahead of time? And with that, we have this continuum of assessments. I really like this figure 7.4, and it goes through these different types of assessments. I often in the classroom use these informal checks for understanding. Something as simple as, give me a thumbs up when you're ready. That's something that you may be like, oh, well, that's silly. That's just nonverbal signaling. And it is, but it also tells you if a student is ready to move on to the next topic, if a student doesn't understand something. And then observations. I can't tell you how I catch student misunderstandings just by observations, reading their body language, Are they playing around with their pencil? Are they taking notes and really applying those notes? Or is that journal just there for doodles? And then for at least for my class, we do pretty often a Friday quick check, and these little quizzes help me quickly assess, all right, are we catching what topics we're presenting this week? Are we understanding it, or is it something that we're still very heavily guided in the conceptual, and we're not yet in the procedural side of the topic? And then that leads to academic prompts and performance tasks. So, and are the performance tasks rigorous enough? Are we able to use and infer the students' knowledge, skills, and understanding and prepare them for that assessment? So with those assessments, there are two different types of rubrics that were mentioned, the analytic and the holistic. And I really like this cartoon here, more of like a political cartoon, calling the holistic rubric simpleton, and then the other one, the analytic, you can tell is very detailed. And so that leads me to this next example. So the holistic rubric, when you're looking at these rubrics, you're really using this to assess the participant's overall achievement on an activity or item. This is needed when a teacher doesn't have the time to provide a lot of feedback. It's pretty clear and concise. One interesting thing I found as I was looking into these types of rubrics is they use these often for like SAT papers and writing, because the graders don't often have time to provide detailed feedback, so they use a holistic rubric. And then you have analytic rubrics. These are the ones I feel like I use the most in class, because students need to clearly see, okay, from beginning to end, what is exemplary, what does a beginner look like, where do those middle two categories fall, what verbs or key vocabulary words here put you in one category over the other. And this is really used to assign different weights or values for different criteria and assess the participants' achievements based on multiple criteria using one rubric, not just a rubric for each individual piece. And it usually has different rows, such as this one here, to differentiate between the different levels or points that they could score. So then I really liked how this one dove into, or this figure dove into the formative versus summative assessments. I think of formative assessments as monitoring and measuring the student's learning during a course of study, and then the summative assessment being the measuring how much a student learned after a unit or course has reached its completion. Formative assessments is what I do, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times in my week. And one formative assessment I really have taken to this year is Plickers. And what Plickers are these little cards that have individualized student codes. So each student has a certain number card with this QR code, and different corners of the QR code have different answer choices like A, B, C, D. So I can pose a question. Students can hold up their card in the direction of the answer choice that they like or wanting to choose. And one keeps it anonymous for the students, because since all of their QR codes are different, they're not embarrassed by picking the wrong choice on their card, because their classmates aren't going to really be able to tell, because as you can tell on this little picture here, the little letters that say A, B, C, D are really tiny and hard to read at a distance. So someone's really going to have to try hard to cheat and or see if their classmates are picking a different answer than them, which I like. It gives them that ease of comfort. But then it also allows for me to quickly assess, again, without that embarrassment, how are we doing? Where are we at? How can I reteach this quickly as I'm gauging this? And it allows for me to also show a graph. So then I can show a graph on the screen after I pose a question and say, okay, well, 65% of you got this question. Now, can someone raise your hand and tell me, why did you pick this question, or why did you not pick this question? And we can dive into those details with the students already having this confidence of knowing that their identity or their answer choice was hidden if they feel like they weren't comfortable with their face being shown or associated with that. And I've noticed that throughout the years, I can taper my use of plickers down because students will become more confident in their answer choices. They'll become more confident in the background knowledge that they bring to the table and their perspectives that they bring to the table in the classroom. So that is my overall summary of the learning assessments. I hope you've enjoyed this, and we'll see you soon.